Selling in a down market, video 9. We're now part of the underwater situation. Today we're going to talk about green light short sales. There are obviously therefore red light short sales and yellow light short sales. The next two videos, 10 and 11, but 9 green light. So first of all, well-advised seller understands all their options, wants to go ahead with a short sale. Now they've asked the right questions. They've hired an experienced realtor who's done short sales. They may or may not have an attorney who advises them. But at the right time, the person doing the negotiating with the bank gets the bank to agree to a properly written approval letter. And this is very, very important. You might not think it would be important for non-recourse loans, but it is, and I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to refer to the California Association of Realtors Short Sale Listing Addendum. In that addendum, they explain quite properly that there is a short sale law, and the short sale law says when you negotiate a short sale with the bank should not be coming after you for the deficiency, and ideally, their approval letter would mirror that language. That's sort of the trap, and they know it, because just lower down the same paragraph, I think now we're at position 3, it says, by the way, it's very important that you have an attorney on your team, you have someone explaining the taxes like a CPA to you, and you get language in your approval letter that addresses the deficiency. They use the other word for deficiency that they like, but it's that. What is going to happen with the remaining loan balance to the bank? You need it. Even though the law says you don't know it, they're telling you need it in the approval language. And that's because the IRS is being very confusing with respect to whether a person owes money after they get the 1099 from the bank. And so that's what this is about. After a short sale, every short sale, a 1099 is sent out by the bank. 1099-C in the case of a short sale. After foreclosure, it's a 1099-A. They send it to home seller and they send it to the IRS. Now, for the last 15 years, not always, because I had some videos where I said sometimes a short sale is better than a foreclosure with respect to taxes. We're sort of back in that range. For some home sellers, these are the red light sellers, a foreclosure is better for them with respect to taxes than a short sale. But for non-recourse sellers, what you don't want to do is turn this beautiful green light short sale into a red light issue with the IRS by having bad approval language. The approval language, I think, should mirror California law. Now, let me just explain. The banks are in other states. They send out approval letters frequently that are generic, that aren't tailored for California law. And you'll see things like mortgage. In California, almost everyone's going to have a deed of trust and a note. So when the bank says we're releasing the mortgage, what did they mean? And those approval letters are quite common. You'll see realtors that used to post them up on their websites as successful short sales. Well, in many states, including a state I was once licensed in when I lived there for 3 years, I passed the bar because I'm a good test taker. The mortgage is probably more similar to what in California would be the lien against the property. So in that circumstance, what the bank's saying is we're going to remove the lien against the property, and it doesn't address the whether you owe money on the loan balance. They're just removing the lien, and that's what many realtors didn't understand then, and now home sellers and realtors should understand. There's two parts to a short sale. There's removing the lien, and there's the loan balance. A good short sale should specifically address both. I think you can read that, if not explicitly from the California Association of Realtors, implicitly when they're warning you to make sure your language addresses the remaining loan balance. There's tax reasons for that. So to sum this up, a green light short sale is someone with a non-recourse loan who's well advised, who has an approval letter that doesn't create problems for them with the IRS. The negotiation with the bank in the right time is important. If you're willing, like sometimes the banks don't want to produce this letter, in my experience, negotiating hundreds of them. But if you're willing and you have a backup plan, in my experience, most of the time the bank came around. I can tell you there are times they don't come around. There were times back then because the banks, because we went to other phases, and sometimes the banks couldn't even prove that they, this is part of the foreclosure crisis, right? They were doing so many that the banks couldn't even prove they owned the mortgage. We had people stay in their property for 3 years, 10 years, while the bank was trying to prove things up. One person, 10 years. At some point, a home seller might have to decide, I cannot sign that approval language, and the bank's not negotiating. What can I do? Well, there are things you can do, but I think you want to probably just have someone who has the authority to explain the law to the banks and says, please go back and re-examine and just get us the language we need. In my experience, a very large percentage of the time, with about 2 to 3 weeks back then, we could go from a poor approval letter to a good one through proper negotiation explanation. You have to understand that people on the other end are frequently not attorneys. They're from other states. They think they're doing you a favor. Where in California, you're sometimes doing their investor a favor, and you have to get this thing escalated to someone who can make a difference. When you're working with the banks and you do it enough, they sort of institutional memory, and they mark things in your file, and it just happens. Or they escalate automatically. It's coming from this attorney. Let's escalate to the right people. And that's when the process is really grooving. Like, for instance, I recently negotiated a deed in lieu for someone. And, it was the normal routine. We got the package in. I called up. They said, it'll take us 48 hours to image the file and your authority. Then they did their normal delay, like the package didn't have numbers on every page. And we're like, my client's like, I told my client, she goes, I wrote the numbers on every page. I'm like, no kidding. But we went along with it. I called back a few days later, and eventually, when they gave us authority to negotiate, it only took a few more days into it. I don't want to act like this was a terrible process. They knew my middle name. I don't use my middle name in my business. I will say that I have a son with a similar name and a father with a different middle name, but they knew my middle name. So I'm presuming that they looked back in the days and they know, like, the banks are deathly afraid of people pulling fast ones on them. So they have a lot of checks. They keep asking the same questions over and over every time. Like, they want to know that you're not tricking them. I think they're deathly afraid they're going to allow fraud to be committed against their investor. So you've got to have people that can convince the bank and give them solutions. Like, sometimes my solution is, look, I'm an attorney in California. I will work with the title people to make sure your title's as good as you'll get if you take a foreclosure. Like, that got some deals done. So that's what it's about. Turning a person with a non-recourse loan into an excellent short sale result or some other loan workout. Non-recourse loans, you have leverage. You should use it to get the result you want. That's a green light short sale.